Hey there, and welcome to Retirement Reimagined. I'm Tiffany Nyiri, Senior Living Specialist, and this is the podcast where we flip the script on senior living. Whether you're a retiree ready to take on a new adventure or just curious about how to make the most of your golden years, you're in the right place. Join me and our amazing expert guests as we dive into everything from hitting the road in an RV, getting your financial ducks in a row, exploring the perks of a reverse mortgage, or just figuring out how to link that smartphone to your car. We're here to inspire, inform, and give you practical tips to live your best retired life. So buckle up, tune in, and let's reimagine what retirement can truly be. Welcome to Retirement Reimagined. We are here with the famous Annalee Kruger, and we are very, very honored to have her here because if you read any of her testimonials, if you read anything about her, 5-star reviews all over the place. She saves families. She saves caregivers. She helps people understand the amount of money it may take to age in place, as well as how to do it. So I'm going to bring her on and let her tell you a little bit about herself.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Tiffany, for having me on your podcast. This is fantastic. So, a little bit about my background. I was a social worker, admissions director, so bringing in new residents into care communities, and executive director of CCRCs, Continuing Care Retirement Communities, for 22 years. Every single day, I had adult kids in my office because mom fell, she broke her hip. She's a caregiver to dad with dementia. Hospital says, here's a list of facilities. Go find one by noon tomorrow because we're discharging your mom. And the kids are like, holy cow, what are we supposed to do? And because they're trying to manage dad at home with his dementia. And so they're surprised about how demented he is because mom kind of protected the kids from like how bad dad is. And so now they're like, well, now we have two parents that need care. The kids had no idea what questions to look for. They didn't know what to ask about during the tour. They didn't understand dementia. They think Medicare and Medicaid are the same thing. They think assisted living and memory care and nursing home, all those levels of care are the same thing and the same rate and the same licensure. And so when I would ask them, like, what do your parents have in order? Like, are you the power of attorney? Do they have long-term care insurance? Is your dad a veteran? Is there a reverse mortgage on the house? Because, we don't know how long they're going to be in our care. And so we need to get all this information. And the kids are like, Annalee, I have no idea. Our family never talks about stuff like this. And then there were like this many people, like this many kids who would say, Annalee, we tried to get this information from mom and dad, but they gave us so much pushback that we quit trying. And because then it was hurting the relationship. So in 2011, after 22 years, I was like, there seems to be a pretty consistent theme here. Families not communicating, families not having family meetings, families not understanding dementia progression and what that actually means, families not understanding how Medicare and Medicaid, what the difference is, families not understanding the changes in family dynamics and family roles, where like now you're the adult son, but you feel more like the parent because you have to like check in and help with decision making. And so in 2011, I left corporate America and went virtual and global right away because by then families didn't live near each other. And so the only way I could facilitate their family meetings and educate them and guide them and coach them and consult with them about all things aging and caregiving and dementia and senior care was to leverage technology, which the kids loved it because they're like, oh, Annalee, I don't want to have to keep flying back and forth to, at the time I was in Milwaukee, and they're like, we just left Milwaukee because we finally got mom situated and we don't have to fly back to meet with you. And I'm like, why would you fly back? Like, we work smarter, not harder. So we leverage technology, and you could just see like the kids are like, oh, this is so great. And so that's what I do. I work with families literally all across the country and help them with care decisions and family relationships and care options.
Yes, and I was reading a little bit where you really want to start, and I'm going to quote here from your website, young and vibrant packages for those seniors who see the value in developing relationships now, not later. So you're in control.
So I have about 65 people. I've always had my young and vibrant club because I found like just from a business perspective, if you just have all frail elderly people on your services, obviously we have attrition, right? Because they pass away. And then I was like, oh my goodness. And so I was like, there's a need for seniors who are more proactive and younger, who want to be independent and have a say in what happens to them as they age. So my Young and Vibrant Club is vibrant. There's still people that travel and golf and all this stuff, but they, once a month we Zoom, and how are things going for you, Marvin? Any changes? And that's like our bare basic, and then we go up from there.
And so, me being somebody that wants to be in control of my future and my aging, I would want to know, obviously, I mean, the big question in the sky is, how much does it really cost to age in place? And I'm
Yeah,
really cutting to the chase here because I think our listeners are going to be very, very surprised.
they are, because I do a lot of speaking engagements and a lot of webinar training for financial planners and family caregivers. And all of their faces are just like, holy cow. So when people say, let me just preface it as this. When people say they want to age in place at home, what they're not thinking about in their head, and it's hard to kind of fast forward in your head to the time when you're not able to wipe your bottom or get yourself out of your bed or put your shoes on or feed yourself or shower yourself. It's really hard for people to fast forward to that. All they know is they want to age in place at home and die at home. But the reality is, none of us, so takeaway one is, none of us get stronger, none of us get more healthy, none of us get more independent, and none of us get more cognizant as we age. So we know that we're going to need care at some point, and most likely 24/7 care. And when people say they want to age in place at home, that's great. But knowing that companion care, and this is just companion care, depending on where you live in the world, but in general, my clients who are wanting to stay at home and they're receiving 24/7 care, they're paying a minimum of 30,000 a month. And that's just in companion care, meaning companion care are people who come in, make sure that mom gets up and ready for the day. They toilet mom, they get her to her doctor's appointments, they remind her to take her medications, they play bingo with her and Uno. That's just companion care. Now, if you need a nurse to come out and set up medications, that's all private pay. So that can be anywhere from 150 an hour to 250 to 300 an hour, door to door, depending on, again, where you live. So when people say they want to age in place at home, they are not understanding that all of this costs money and it's out of pocket expense. Even if you have long-term care insurance, there is no policy that is going to cover 30 grand a month in home care, right? And so then that's provided you have one parent. Let's just use my parents as an example. My mom, morbidly obese, diabetic, mild cognitive impairment, has her days and nights mixed up, wanders, sundowns at 3 o'clock sharp, 3 o'clock until 6 o'clock. She is all over the place, right? My dad had a stroke. He's 6'4" and tall guy, not heavy, but just tall. And so thankfully, he was able to take care of himself. He recovered well, but that's because I was there and was able to get care to him right away. But my point is, if my mom and my dad were to age in place at home, my mom needed at least one caregiver, um, to just keep her active and keep her safe and all that kind of stuff, and redirected and busy. And my dad, because he's 6'4", he would have needed two caregivers if he needed help with transferring from chair to shower or getting dressed. Because these caregivers, they're not linebackers on a football team, right? So for the home care company to come out and do an assessment, they're going to be like, okay, well, you've got two aging parents, but dad's 6'4" and he's 240 pounds, and mom's 5'2", but she's 300 pounds and she's demented. They would have had to send three caregivers out. And so that's how that can add up really quickly. And it's out of pocket costs. And so when people say they want to age in place at home, they don't understand how expensive that is. So when we work with a family, and I'm facilitating their family meetings, and we're going through like what care options are available to them based on what they can afford and what care levels that we know that they're going to need. And it's often that both parents need two different care levels. Mom might need memory care and dad might need nursing home. They're two totally different levels of care and two totally different price tags. And so when we talk about, aging in place at home, we also need to have, when we do an aging plan, we have that conversation with the family and we facilitate it and say, okay, now that we know how much these care costs are going to be, because we have a done for you care matrix project that we do for families where we're outlining different home care options and how much they cost and how much they charge per hour. But we also do the same thing for long-term care communities and assisted living. And that way we get the waiting lists, the floor plans, we look at the state surveys, what levels of care do they offer, how much money do you have to be able to financially qualify to get into there, because families don't realize that they have to financially qualify. And so this way, when we do that care matrix with them and go over all these different home care and senior care community options, then we can reverse engineer and say, okay, Ethel and Marvin, mom and dad, now that we know that you have to have, $2 million to financially qualify to get into these particular care communities, we need to reverse engineer and say, okay, how much are we going to spend? That's why I work with a lot of financial planners, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of financial planners. Because I'm like, okay, what is going to be your aging in place at home care budget, so that you don't break the bank and now not be able to financially qualify to get into a care community. And some of these care communities can have a 3, 4, 5-year waiting list. So if you want to age in place, this is why I say there's a lot of nuances to aging planning. Because if you're like, well, we're going to spend $600,000 a year, or when we get to $600,000 spent on home care, however that goes, that's like our line in the sand of, we can only spend $600,000 so that then we can still financially afford to be able to get into these care communities that you want to get into. Families don't think about that. And then the second part of that is it's about a 30-prong approach. But the other thing that we have to talk about is, what are going to be those safety triggers? So that mom and dad can stay home until these things happen, like weight loss, mom wanders out of the house, dad falls and breaks his hip, mom has another stroke, they're starting to eat burnt food or, old food, and they're starting to get sick. So we have to have all of those conversations. And the reason why it's helpful to have these with us is because A, we know what we're doing, but B, families don't think about all of these different nuances so that they don't unintentionally make really, really poor decisions that I can't always undo. Right?
Yes. And when you're talking about long-term care, and I'm not talking about the one you pay money for, but you've got to be strategic. And a lot of people, this is not the first time I'm hearing it, but every time I hear it, it's mind-blowing to me that, number one, it appears that the wealthy are the only ones that get to be taken care of in their home. Well, unfortunately. But it's a plan. So because I can't even, I'm just so, I'm overwhelmed a little bit about what you're saying, and I'm sure our audience is just a little bit, because this might be the first time they're hearing this.
Probably.
And I'm
that's
guessing
that's the problem. That's why I do what I do. And that's why our volume is so significant. And that's why I serve families wherever they are, wherever they live, and wherever they are in these kind of decision-making process, because there is a strategy that you have to use. And I want to go back, Tiffany, to what you said about only the wealthy can age in place at home. That's sort of kind of true. But the reality is, if you can't find quality, properly trained, caring, compassionate healthcare workers, then it doesn't matter how much money you have. Like some people who live in rural areas, there just aren't caregivers. Or, I have clients up in northern Wisconsin. There's not like home care companies on every corner like a Walgreens, right? They're few and far between. I have clients that are on waiting lists with the home care companies in their area because they don't have staff to fill shifts. That's why when we do that care matrix, we call all of these home care companies and we'll say, okay, are you taking clients? What are your shift minimums? Because otherwise families have to do all this work, this legwork, and do their own care matrix. and they don't have time because they got thrust into caregiving, or they got thrust into decision making, or they don't have their own health issues, or they have a special needs child, and they're like, there's not enough of me and energy and grit to go around to figure out what to do with mom and dad. And that's why we take that off their plate for them.
Wow. So even if they had the money, there's not a caregiving is very difficult. It's not for everybody. You
It's
have to
not for
have that.
everyone.
You have to have the empathy. You have to have the heart. And it takes a very special person.
It takes a special person, and you actually have to be trained on, whatever that patient has, like dementia or MS or ALS or cancer, or, you actually have to have properly trained people. But still, and you have to have enough people on the bench, so to speak, so that if you're like, okay, I'm going to age in place at home and I'm going to, hire my own caregivers, well, that's great. But now you put yourself in the scheduler position of, okay, well, now this caregiver is calling in sick, or this one's on maternity leave, or this one wants to go back to their homeland for a month. And so now what are you going to do? Because now you have to train a whole new batch of people. Your parents have to be on board with it. And I can tell you the complaints that my clients have that are trying to age in place is obviously cost. Number two is just the availability and dependability and reliability of home care workers. Now, when you find that right team of home care, it's truly magical. And these are people, right? So it's not always going to be great. It's going to be bumpy. But the other thing that families will find themselves in is, as adult kids, you can put all these safety rails in place and safety measures in place and be like, okay, home care, yes. And geriatric care manager, yes, great. We're going to do that. But if mom and dad don't let them in, or they fire them, then what are you going to do? So again, that's what adult kids find themselves in this predicament all the time, because they're like, look, mom and dad, I can't keep flying back and forth and taking more time off work or stepping away from my business, or my wife is supposed to have cancer treatments, and I got to be there for her, and I can't keep, divvying up all my time for you. And so that's what adult kids and family caregivers kind of get thrust into. And at some point they realize what they're doing is not safe or sustainable.
Okay. So how do people pay for this? I mean, obviously there's savings.
To pay for care, yeah.
Mhm.
So there's savings, long-term care insurance, which will cover some, but like a little bit, and because long-term care costs weren't what they were in 10, 15, 20 years ago when a lot of these people bought the policy. And so they pay by their savings, their retirement. They sell their real estate so that they can stay home. Like a lot of my clients will have multiple properties, so they'll start selling them off. They'll pay via, if there's veteran benefits like aid and attendance. If your parent was a veteran and they qualify, obviously they can use reverse mortgage funds if they qualify, and that's the right fit for a reverse mortgage potentially. But still, it's like, so then you have this like bucket of money. So how much of that bucket of money, whether it's savings or however it is you're going to do that, still have to figure out what is that aging in place at home care budget, just in case you can't stay at home because it's not safe. Or, I live in Florida. We have tornadoes, or we have hurricanes about every other 7 minutes. And so when your house is demolished and you don't have a safety net in place, and your dad and mom have dementia and they're trying to age in place at home, but their roof just got blown off, what are you going to do? So these are all things that families just don't think about until they're forced into it. It's like, I'm very risk averse. So because I also know what happens when people don't have a plan, it's a mess and it's total chaos. And one would hope that the aging process and dementia and senior care would bring families together, but I'm here to tell you that it does not. And when families don't know how to navigate senior care, they don't know how to navigate their family dynamics. Not everybody gets along. We got a lot of blended families. Sometimes the kids have never even met each other because their parents have only been married for like 9 months and they're 85 years old. So they're like, we don't even know.
That's a whole different book you could write.
That's a whole other podcast, like what to do with a blended family. So like that's why, it's complicated, and that's why families really need to have a neutral third party person who has this type of healthcare and senior care and dementia and family dynamics and family mediation expertise, because I come all bundle packed with all of that. because that's the type of people, that's the type of expert that these families really need to be working with. Google will only get you so far. Chat GPT will only get you so far. And neighbor Joe's, what he did with his parents will only get you so far.
And it's interesting, going back to long-term care, because I'm doing a reverse for a client and they want to spend, their financial advisor or their insurance person is telling them long-term care, and it's like $150,000. But you're saying it doesn't really help, because this is when you want long-term care to kick in.
Yeah, so that's always the question, because I do a lot of training with financial planners and the financial services profession in general, and one of the problems is that because I meet with financial planners every day, right? Because I do their training, and so one of the questions every single day when I'm working training a new financial planner is, well, how much are we supposed to expect to budget for long-term care? And 90% of them are still using, and I don't know where they're getting it, but it's obviously in their software system. They're still using 5,800 a month for 24/7 care, and that is woefully under budgeted. And I said, you guys, that is why we have to start working as a team of professionals, because they aren't experts in what I do and I'm not experts in what they do, but we need to start collaborating on mutual clients so that our families, our clients, have the best possible outcomes because they're making informed decisions, because all of us dropped our egos at the door and start working together.
And I'm so happy you say that, because some people definitely need to drop some egos and go, I did not know that. Thank you so
Correct.
much. I need to work it in, because
Yes.
this is the good of my client, not the good of my reputation.
Right.
So I work with financial advisors as well and they're like, oh, my clients don't need reverse mortgages. Are you
I
sure?
know.
That is because it's super strategic if it's used properly, but it's all education.
It's a lot of education, and you got to find the ones that care and that are coachable. We won't go down the rabbit hole of that, but like in 2011, when I first started Care Right, I started marketing to the financial services industry, your industry, and the CFP, financial planners. Everybody was like, oh, none of our clients are caregivers. None of our clients have dementia. None of our clients are having any of these issues that you keep talking about at these meetings and speaking engagements. And I'm like, you are so woefully out of touch with what's going on with your clients.
Mm-hmm.
So now, though, thankfully now the industry is starting to wake up and realize, my clients are starting to ask me about aging and dementia and senior care, and they don't know what to do. And that's why I'm like, let's start working together so that you can look like a hero,
Yes.
but also have an ethical financial plan, because now we know exactly how much care is going to cost for that particular client.
Yes. We're giving them a tool.
Correct.
Yes. We're giving them the tool. And that's all I always say. Look, every situation requires the proper tool.
That's right.
My husband always says, man, I could have done that in an hour if I would have had the right tool, but it took me 5.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So, I'm going back on a couple different things. Financial advisor training, you offer this.
Yeah. So in two ways, because when I started Care Right in 2011, I started sponsoring the Wisconsin FPA, the Wisconsin Financial Planners Association, where there's reverse mortgages, there's long-term care, it's financial services. So reverse and long-term care, and then financial planners. And so I started sponsoring the Wisconsin FPA, and that's where you can't speak to them unless you're paying, right? Because that's part of being an associate sponsor. And so when I realized that they're leaving this like massive opportunity on the table for their clients to actually have a proper financial plan and have a proper end of life aging senior care plan, I got mad because I couldn't find advisors who were coachable or financial services who were coachable. And so I created the Elder Planning Specialist Certificate Program for CFPs, and it breaks down, each week. It's a 10-week program. So each week I'm teaching them about family caregivers, like what your clients are actually going through that you probably don't know because you're not asking them the questions yet. So it's teaching them what questions to ask their clients. And it's helping them understand aging, dementia progression, end of life, making sure that they have their clients, that they have their estate documents in order, and that they're talking about long-term care insurance, and that they're talking about reverse mortgage, and all of those things. That's elder planning, right? And that to use a collaborative approach with other professionals instead of working in silos, so that when your clients need 24/7 care and they're in their head thinking, oh, it's $5,800 a month because that's what my financial planner told me, at some point these families are going to be like, wow, you were so wrong on this, and there's going to be some consequences to that. So I created the Elder Planning Specialist Certificate Program, with my business partner for that company, with Bob Mauderstock. And so we partner now with the FPA, National FPA, and so they help co-market the program. And we usually get 20 to 30 financial planners each cohort. So that way we're training advisors on how to broach these topics and how to put an ethical financial plan in place, and using a collaborative approach, but also differentiating themselves from the transactional advisors who don't care, and they're not addressing aging issues, or they have too big of an ego because they're too uncomfortable to talk about aging and dementia and end of life.
Yeah. And a lot of people are. Oh my gosh, there's just
So there's
so
so
much
there's
to absorb.
So there's that training if people actually want to get certified and get their 10 CEs. Otherwise, a lot of advisors, and I don't blame them because they have to know a lot of other stuff already. A lot of them are like, I don't want to take a 10-week class because it's time consuming. It's 5 to 6 hours a week of time commitment to get the certification. So it's not like this light little willy-nilly little certification program, because I'm like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right, because that's my brand. And so if they don't want to go through the actual certification, then they can just have me train them and their teams. And so I've got about 27 wealth management clients, that have me train their teams, via webinar on all of this
Wow.
stuff.
Okay. So this gives, this, and when I talk to my financial planners, I'm just going to ask them, how much do you allocate for
Mm-hmm.
care?
24/7 care at
yeah,
home.
yes.
How much do you allocate for 24/7 care at home?
Okay.
How much do you allocate for cost of care at a care community? And most of them don't even know what a community entrance fee is. They don't know that, to get into some of these care communities, the CCRC model, the care, continuing care community model, they can have a $500,000 or $6 million entrance fee. And then you still have to pay room and board. You still have to pay the cost of care. If your spouse is moving in with you, there's a second person fee that can be upwards of $2,500 a month. And so all of these fees add up. And so if the financial advisor doesn't know this, because they're not willing to work with experts who do know this, I'm trying to make them look good, right? Then that's where there's going to be some significant consequences from these clients that they're working with.
Okay.
And should be.
Yes, yes. So we're getting upwards of 30 minutes, and this has been gold, 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 because this is not something that people are prepared for. Again, because we depend on our financial advisor.
Yeah.
How else are we going to know?
Right.
And then of course I have parents that are in their 75s, healthy, but I have started to have the conversation with them because this is my world. I talk to seniors every day, all day. And it was a little difficult at the beginning. My dad didn't even want to get a trust. So little by little, he had a misunderstanding of what a trust was.
Mm-hmm.
He had a misunderstanding of what a reverse was. My dad now has a trust. He now has a reverse. Little by little communication, everybody. And it takes a community. It takes community. If you see someone in need, reach out to their family members or reach out to someone that can help them.
Right. And the reality is, like I said, I don't know, this is my third podcast for today. I'm so sorry. I think on this one I might have said, but if I didn't, I'm going to say it now. None of us get healthier. None of us get stronger. Did I say that on this one?
You did, but please,
Okay.
it's so true.
None of us get healthier. None of us get stronger. None of us get more cognizant, and none of us get more able-bodied as we age. So every single family needs needs our aging plan, because at some point their loved one's health is going to change. Like all the people who had major strokes last Thursday didn't wake up thinking, oh, I think I'm going to have a major stroke today, and let's just stress test my finances and stress test my family relationships. Heck no. They're out golfing or traveling, and all of a sudden they're like having a stroke. I was hit by a school bus as a pedestrian at age 40. Nobody wakes up thinking, oh, I'm going to get T-boned by a semi trying to get home from work. These things happen. So oftentimes people will say, well, when is the time to start putting a plan in place? And the time is like today, like right now, because you just never know. And not to be a Debbie Downer, but for God's sake, why would you want to be willy-nilly and risky with your quality of life, your care options, and your legacy for your family? Not only financial legacy, but like, do you know how many kids never speak to each other again after mom dies? A lot, because they
Going
didn't
through it.
have. See, that's why 85% of my 85% of my clients, 85% of my week is doing family mediation with families all across the country. And a lot of it is because they don't understand dementia. They don't understand caregiver burnout. They don't understand the cost of care. They don't understand care options. And maybe they never got along in the first place. So we're dealing with that too. I'm like, I'm sorry that brother Joe said something stupid at Christmas 25 years ago, but dad has dementia. So let's like focus on that right now. Can we do that? So, yeah.
Okay, so that was a really great summary. Is there anything else you'd like to add as a wrap up for our listeners and the adult children? I'm guessing is probably
Yeah.
our audience.
The adult children.
Yeah.
Because adult kids are the ones who call me because they're like, because they heard me on a podcast or they read my book, The Invisible Patient, or
Which is an excellent book.
hold this
My
up here.
goodness. Yes.
And that's why I wrote it, because I've had thousands of adult kids, because that's who comes to me on my calendar. They're like, hey, tell me about this aging plan thing, because we're in a mess. They're overwhelmed, they're burned out, they're spending thousands of dollars out of pocket trying to tend to mom and dad, or stepping away from work and all that kind of stuff. So in closing, the adult kids who are listening to this are like, okay, this is all great, but how do I get mom and dad on board? So this is how. These are the questions you can ask your parents. Mom and dad, we are in uncharted territory. We don't know what we don't know. And so I heard this podcast, this Annalee, she sounds like she knows what she's doing. This isn't her first rodeo. She offers a free 30-minute consult. Let's just see what she has to say about our situation and how she can help us with putting a plan in place. So that's one way. Mom and dad, we're in uncharted territory. Number two, you can say, mom and dad, or whomever, is it important for you to have a say in what happens to you as you age or as your health declines? Because we also work with a lot of people with MS and ALS, and those are, in their 40s and 50 years, so they have a shorter life expectancy. So is it important for you to have a say in your aging years, or as your health condition changes? Who's going to say no to that?
Right.
But the other reality is, if it's too far gone, like mom and dad, or dad has dementia, you can't ask him stuff like that, because it's a brain disease and it's shrinking. So you can't say, Dad, I'd like to put an aging plan in place. And he'll be like, oh yeah, let's do this. Because if he doesn't even know what day of the month it is, as an example, then that's why, adult kids, if your parents aren't open to this whole aging plan concept, it doesn't really matter, because you know that without a plan, everything is going to fall on your shoulders. You're going to get that crisis call. You probably already are. And at some point, it's just not going to be safe, affordable, or sustainable. That's why the whole book is the emotional, financial, and physical toll on family caregivers. What are you going to do if mom is the primary caregiver to dad, and dad has dementia, and mom has a stroke because she's so overwhelmed and she's so burned out? When you get that crisis call, you have to make big decisions quickly, and you can't get quality care always right out of the gate. There's thought that has to go through this, that has to be a part of this aging planning process. So So if you're the parents though listening to this, if you're the Ethels and the Marvins and you're like, God, Annalee, I've tried to have these conversations with my kids, but they give me so much pushback, then you can leverage this podcast and well and say, let's listen to this podcast together. And she brought up all these points that, I worry about. What if something happens to me? Who's going to take care of your mom? I don't want us to be a burden on you kids. And so let's talk about putting a plan in place. You can start with my book even or listen to any other caregiver podcast. We all say the same things about let's plan ahead because you're not going to have good options if you choose to wait until crisis mode. You just aren't.
Yes, yes. And again, it's raising the hand, asking the questions. And no one wants to talk about dying. Some people think if you talk about it, it's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're not even talking about dying. We're just talking about making sure that
Care.
mom doesn't miss 4 days of medications because no one's there to make sure that she's got her medications set up right.
Yes.
Or that she remembered. We're talking about like, let's have the best quality of life and the best quality of care and be as safe and happy as possible while you're alive. We're doing while you're alive planning,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and part of that is after life planning too, your will and stuff like that. But that's where the attorney, but that's why I use a collaborative approach. I'm kind of the hub, and I'm like, okay, but you also need to look at reverse or long-term care insurance or whatever. Because now that the kids are part of this whole process of an aging plan, and they're like, holy smokes, I didn't realize it was going to be 30 grand cost of care right now for 24/7 care for one companion. What are we going to do? And if you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, now is a time to be putting your financial solution plan in place as well. And if your financial advisor is not asking you about these questions, what's your plan as you age? Do you know how much care costs? Like, what conversations have you had as a family about the what whens of aging? Like I created the grab and go binder because the adult kids had no idea what their parents had in order. So the grab and go binder is it's digital now. It's just this like massive checklist. That's a great project that you can do as a family together to say that way mom and dad don't feel like they're being singled out or picked on. Like, mom and dad, we all have to get our estate documents in order. We all have to get our living wills, and we all have to get our accounts and passwords and our insurance and all this. So do that as a project, as a family, so that no one feels picked on. That can be part of the baby steps, like how you talked about with your dad. You have to do it in baby steps sometimes, and you can do that when you're proactive. But when that stroke happens or dad wanders out of the house and gets hit by a car or gets lost driving, you don't have the luxury of time. That's why most of our families come to us in crisis.
Thank you so much. I learned so much today. And I'm going to guess our listeners did too, because this is something that a lot of people just don't talk about.
They don't talk about it until they're forced into it. And then that's why they don't get along. But to like tail end this here,
Yes.
if that's the right word, is your reverse mortgage solution can be an ideal fit for people who are trying to age in place at home. It can be a bucket of money or a bucket of resources to leverage to help mom and dad stay at home and hopefully be able to get the best quality of care. So it can absolutely be a fantastic what is
Tool.
that tool? There we go.
It's a tool.
Fantastic tool.
And yeah.
Yep.
And
So
we talk about it as a group. Like you said, we all need to come together with their financial advisor and the children, if necessary,
mhm.
because a lot of children want the house as inheritance. So we have to get over that mom and dad are this is their money, why they're here, unfortunately, still their money. And we're going to be using it for care. So again, just a tool, doesn't work for everybody, but when it does, it's fantastic to weave into your financial plan.
That's right.
And
That's right.
sometimes the sooner the better, because of maybe the line of credit. A lot of people don't know about the growth factor and all the stuff. And I'm not going to go into it because we had such a good podcast about what you were saying that maybe you and I will do another one about this. But I don't want to veer off onto the reverse mortgage at this time, even though I could talk about it all day long.
Yeah.
Because I think we hit on some really good things that the family needs to focus on. And this is going to be a tool that that you approach with them or whomever they trust to discuss this sort of thing. So yes, there are tools. We just need to raise our hand and ask about them.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
This was fantastic. Time
Thank
always
you.
just like zips right by
I know.
because there's so much that, I always feel like I'm like throwing all this information out, but I'm like, well, I got a captive audience. Someone's listening to this at some point. So I'm going to just tell you some things that you need to know like right now.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap that up for our listeners so that they can go on. They're going to have all of your information in the listing under the podcast and in the YouTube, so they can just click on your website. But real quick, tell us where they should go.
CareRightInc.com. So that's
Easy.
CareRightInc. So Care Right Inc.
Everything spelled correctly, not with
Yes.
a K, but with a C.
Correct. And RIGHT.
RIGHT. Yes. So good for you spelling everything correctly. So please go investigate. Annalee is highly recommended, and it will help the flow. It will help the headaches. It will help the stress. It will help everybody in the family.
Well, it'll get your life back on track too.
Yes.
Because caregiving without an aging plan will derail your career, your business, your finances, and your relationships all across the board and your health. So let's prevent that.
Yes. Thank you so much. And again, there'll be links. Her book, there's going to be links. I'm actually going to talk to her off camera and see how I can get a bulk amount of them so that I can start distribute them when I see a need. I'm just going to hand the book out. So thank you everybody for listening. Send this podcast, send this YouTube to someone you know needs it. Again, it is a community. We have to take care of each other. So please share, and thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in to Retirement Reimagined. I hope today's episode gave you some great tips to elevate your retirement. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you found our discussion helpful, please leave a review. It helps others find the podcast too. Curious about how to unlock new financial opportunities in retirement? I'd love to chat and explore how we can make your golden years even brighter. Until next time, I'm Tiffany Nyiri. Keep reimagining.